Okay, so here we have hispidus canker, and hispidus canker refers to a disease. It's another canker rot organism, Inonotus hispidus, that causes it. This is a basidiomycete fungus that causes a canker rot on hardwoods, and very commonly it occurs on oaks, and that's most frequently what we see it on. But it actually can occur on other hardwoods as well. Hickories, for example, Cario species. But most frequently we see this on laurel oaks and water oaks in our region. Very, very common on those two. So this is, like I said, this is a canker rot. So in other words, this fungus is capable of killing living cambial tissue, and then it also invades the sapwood, causing a decay, a white rot decay. So Inonotus hispidus, to identify this, to identify the disease, we look for signs and symptoms. And if you see the fungus, the fungus usually produces the fruiting bodies during the summer, from mid to late summer, usually here in Florida. It depends on, it varies depending on where you're at. But the fruiting bodies are what we refer to as ephemeral. In other words, they're only present during a certain time, and then they sort of dry up and become less apparent. So when they're produced, they tend to be yellow to orange in color and somewhat velvety in texture on the upper portion of the cap. And sometimes they'll have like little droplets on them, but they're sort of fleshy, and they can be quite large, but they are shelf-like, as you can see, and they have pores on the lower surface. And I have one here. We can actually see the pores. But you can see that's what the fungus looks like. But as the fungus, once the fungus produces its spores over a couple of weeks, the fungus, the fruiting body actually starts to dry up, and it will become black in appearance as it dries. And so it dries up, starts to sort of shrivel a bit, and becomes quite black in appearance. And then at that point, it will then fall off of the tree. Typically, it'll drop to the ground, and you'll sometimes see these at the bases of these trees, remaining for then several months afterwards. And so we have several of these here. They almost look, they're very dark brown, chocolate brown to black in color, and don't really look much like they did when they were fresh at all. But this is characteristic of this fungus to do this. So, hispidus canker, that's the signs you're going to look for of the pathogen, Inonotus hispidus. Now, in terms of symptoms, it produces a large, elongated canker on the tree, so a sunken area of dead tissue. And usually these are large, elongated areas on the main stem of the tree, usually on mature or maturing hardwoods. They tend to be longer than wide, of course, and they sometimes will have callus tissue on the edges, because the tree, over time will sort of fight this thing depending on how much stress the tree has. And then there's usually decay associated with it. So inside of that tree there would be decay, but you'd have to investigate that to see that more. Okay, so those are kind of the primary signs and symptoms of this, and like a lot of these canker rots, this tends to affect trees that have some kind of stress associated with them. But for some species, like especially water oak, Quercus nigra, or the laurel oaks, especially Quercus hemispherica, this is something that is frequent on mature specimens, and they don't necessarily have to have a lot of stress associated with them. They're just it's something that occurs on trees that are 40 or 50 years old or so, especially in urban landscapes and things like that. And it's a very common. This is a very, very common disease that occurs on those species in this region. So that is hispidus canker.